managers have to do some segmentation and have different strokes for different folks. So these are a couple of questions that I want to leave in your mind, and then maybe at the end of it come to that. My presentation is pretty much similar to what each of us have talked about. Yes, truly engaged employees are more productive, more dedicated, conscientious, and therefore bring two huge impacts. The first impact is on the discretionary effort, which comes from the rational side of commitment, and the other comes from the retention, and which is also largely driven by the emotional side of my commitment. So there are companies, and I'm going to skip this because this is just trying to show you how engaged and disengaged employees have a different discretionary effort and a different percentage on intent to stay. This is again showing you how companies have really outperformed the other companies where the employees are not so engaged, and how the fence sitters, people who are agnostic to whether being engaged or not engaged, can be so easily pulled or are up for grabs for the other takers in this hot job market. And therefore, what is it that I need to do? Because it's a huge cost when I go out hiring those managers, training those managers, and then losing it to competition. And then, you know, in India today, the premium that we pay for any move is an average of 22 to 25%. So if I have to pay, and you have to pay that 22 to 25% premium for any move that we make, we keep spiraling that basis the demand and supply. Again, coming back to some of the drivers which I spoke about, the rational and the emotional commitment, which is extremely important. And therefore, what do I do and enable, like Vivek talked about, to enable the rational commitment, like the job in itself, like the vision and the values, the products of the company, the brand value of the company, and what is it that I need to do to build the emotional commitment, and where the manager plays a very, very important role, and the environment plays a very important role for the intent to stay. And I'm giving you some of the examples of the rational commitment and what are the factors that really impact an individual to perform better. And I'm not going to go into these details, but I'm just very quickly going to take you to what Schneider does really well. And Schneider follows the advocacy method, and I'm sure some of you would have heard about the book, The Ultimate Question, where it is based on the customer experience. When is it that the customer will recommend you or your company, your services or your products to another customer, a prospective customer? Similarly, we base our employee net promoter score, which is the engagement or advocacy question that we use every quarter. So what happens is 100% of the employees get a survey every quarter on how likely is it that you will recommend Schneider Electric to one of your friends as a good place to work. And basis that, we have a scale which is 1:10, 9 and 10 are promoters, 1 to 7 are detractors, and 7 and 8 are passive. It's a very stringent scale, but we feel that people who are really, really committed to the organization will advocate this organization to another employee. And then we have these driver questions which are based on the managerial feedback, and we talked enough about how a manager can build that engagement, and therefore the quality of managers has to improve, and an ongoing feedback needs to be provided to keep the employee engaged and motivated. Employee recognition and how important it is for an individual to keep his motivation levels high, whether it is a formal, informal, whether it is cash, whether it is a tangible, intangible, whichever way of recognition, it's extremely important. Collaboration, and Vivek touched enough about it, and you know, the moment we say, yes, the moment you do not lay the emphasis on who's going to get the credit, a lot of work is going to be done. And we've also seen that the teams are highly engaged and charged when they're working in teams, and rather than, you know, individual contributors. Career development and the investment in that, how important it is. And in fact, when we regressed this to the ultimate question, we saw that this is the driver question which had the biggest impact on employee engagement and on employee advocacy. Company vision, and of course willingness to do more for the company, which is the discretionary effort. Now, I talked about this survey being administered every quarter to 100% of the employees, but what happens thereafter? So we can continue to do a lot of surveys, and HR can feel really happy about the scores, but what happens thereafter is more important. We give the manager his individual score. So in order to ensure the confidentiality, we say that you need to have a team size of 20 or more to be able to get your scores. But every manager who has a team size of 20 or more gets his individual engagement score for the team. And that gives the accountability and the responsibility to him that yes, in case he has a low score, he needs to do something. And for us at the country level, the HR and the country president, their role is to ask the right questions. So if the score is low, asking the right questions will drive the right behavior. So all we ask is, what is that one action that you took in the last quarter, and what is that one focus area that you will work on next quarter? So one, there is a dipstick which is taken every quarter. That means there is a recency impact, and we keep very close to the pulse of the organization. Second factor which is important is the ownership and accountability of the manager. HR and the top management is not going to drive it. Third, action planning. The score is not an end in itself. There needs to be some action planning around it. Fourth, which is extremely important, is communication. So we have a template. Every quarter we say, you said this and we did this. That means, what are we building on? That means we care for the employees and that they are being heard. This is one of the very important needs of the employees, to be engaged, to be heard, to be listened to and acted upon. So by doing all of this, we are able to really improve the employee net promoter score, and we've seen this. In fact, for Schneider worldwide, we are present in more than 100 countries, and India got the gold trophy because of this practice and how we were driving this. So again, going back to what I think Neeraj or Mr. Bhinde said, it's not about pulling or pushing the employees, it's about driving from within, and that's what the management and the managers at every level, whoever had a team size of 20 and above, was driving it. So we were creating shared leadership and not an individual leadership, because each and every leader was owning this as his own target and his own agenda, and how important it was for him to drive his business results is what we were trying to do. So this is a couple of things that the Ivy Business School said, and we kind of correlated it with the actions and the driver actions that we take. That leaders must connect with the employees, and we have various templates, the way we do our people connect, and frequency and all of that is measured. So HR is an enabling function who does that. Ensuring that people have a meaningful career. We have a once a year CCR, which is called Career and Competency Review, which each and every manager is supposed to have, and then we review that. Clarity of goals and visions, and there is a lot that is done in terms of India's senior leadership communication, MD's blog, and a lot of cascading of communication. convey performance and behavior expectations through goal setting, reward and recognition, consult them in decision making, because that's one of the very primary needs of an individual, to be involved, consulted, and the others I've already touched upon. So the key takeaways I would summarize in my last slide, that employee engagement has a huge significant impact on two very, very important organization indicators, which is performance and retention. Companies, we've seen with an above average employee commitment have an above average revenue growth as well. Vast majority of employees are up for grabs. We've seen that in case we do not keep them engaged rationally and emotionally. And different forms of commitments need to be capitalized on. Manager is the only conduit to drive this, and not HR. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shalini. I think we have about, by my watch, about 20 minutes to 1. So I think we will take the questions. Is it okay? Yeah. So I would like the person who would like to ask the question to identify himself and restrict it to the question rather than observations, because observations will take a lot of time. Observations of you want to contribute something will come probably in the lunch time, but I think the question would be restricted to a question rather than observations. Question, yeah. Please identify yourself. Yes,
sure.
Madam.
I am Priyanka Krishna, and I'm a student. I'm doing MSc in psychology.
And second thing is, if you can direct the question to anyone
Sure.
if you would like particular
Sure.
person.
Yeah, I'm Priyanka Krishna. I'm doing MSc in psychology and counseling. My question is to Dr. Shalini Sareen. I wanted to ask one question: is that how do you ensure the assessment of confidentiality of the assessment?
So this is this is a survey which is administered by a third party. It's a global tie-up that we have with Harrison Group. Okay. They administer the survey. Okay. And we do not get individual results. We only get a result which is aggregated, and if I have an employee size or respondent size of 20 or above.
Okay. My second question is that, ma'am, as a HR head, how many reportees you have, in a sense?
So ours is a very highly matrix organization.
Yeah.
I have a team size in the country of 120 HR professionals.
Okay.
Out of them, only 15 directly report to me. The rest have some global, vertical, horizontal, dotted, imaginary, all kinds of lines.
Okay. So my question here is, since you said that team manager needs to have at least 20 people reporting directly to him, how do you assess, taking your example here?
So if I was to take my personal example, I do not get a link directly for my direct reportees, because I have a team size of 15, I said, direct reportees. However, I also get a country data, because I am responsible also for the country. Okay. So not only my direct reportees, but I would also be responsible. And in the country, we have 15,000 employees. So, but we can derive the data if the data point is more than 10 or above.
Okay, so you'll be seeing your manager's data rather than yourself.
No,
and
my
so
own data also can be derived, because I have more than 10 respondents. Okay. So more than 10 you can derive data, 20 you directly get your data, and 10, less than 10 you don't even get to see, you can't even derive.
Okay. Can we give a chance to someone else?
Sure, thanks.
We'll come back to you. Anyone else?
Yeah, I have a question.
If you can come forward. Yeah, please.
My name is Shubhashish Bhattacharya.
Yes.
See, my question is, we have heard a lot about how important it is to have engaged employees. However, some of the very large organizations that we have seen in the last 10, 20 years, they have grown. The very important function of customer interface is always outsourced to franchisees or call centers, where the people who are engaging the customers earn very little, 3,000 rupees or something like that. Now, how important is it to engage employees. I mean, I don't see any engagement, employee engagement there, but their growth results are phenomenal.
Is your question to any specific?
No, to the entire group.
Okay. Who would like to answer? Would you like to answer? Or? Yeah.
I think if you are talking about frontline
Thank you. I'll not switch it on. Okay.
Okay, I don't know whether this is working or not.
Yeah, but we can hear you.
Okay. So, if you're talking of frontline folks, whether in sales or some of them in call centers, many companies outsource them. And I think all of us have also seen that in many instances, and I'm not saying just because they are outsourced, but we also feel that many of them seem to be disengaged. So the experience that you and I get when we call up a call center or when we are talking to a salesman is not really that of an engagement. Now, maybe this is done for saving cost, or it might be done for other, the other thing that companies do is that when they are dealing with very large number of employees, that is one other reason why they outsource. But clearly, that does, that is in line with the basic assumption that, in order to be engaged, the employee needs to kind of be well supervised. He has to understand the vision and the values of the company. He has to identify with the products of the company. So the fact that in spite of that some companies do well is there. But outsourced employees, many of them are disengaged, and that shows up in the kind of experiences that we have when we
Absolutely. And I would like to add here, sometimes it becomes business imperative also to kind of outsource this kind of function. For example, Super Alligator is India's largest diagnostic company. Now, our strength is diagnosis, but a stage reached where our company had to set up 24/7, customer contact center. So we realized that we simply do not have the internal competency to, plan, conceptualize, recruit, train, and execute a 24/7 call center. So what we decided, after evaluating internal as well as external option, the question you posed to the forum, posed us also, and we eventually decided that it is better to outsource this to a company which has core competency in this, and they have their own, of course, and we bring domain knowledge. So we'll have technology and the process knowledge from somewhere else, and we provide the domain knowledge. And the right marriage of these two will provide at least what is required to run the call center. Issue of this, how do we keep them engaged, is very, very critical, because their lack of response or poor response can affect our business, not necessarily of that outsourced company. There, what we try to ensure is we have our own audits. We ensure that what kind of systems, HR systems and processes they follow, what kind of onboarding they are doing, what kind of engagement activity they are doing. But call center can cause a lot of stress, what kind of de-stressing activities they are doing. So we, in our own interest, try to ensure that these factors are taken care of.
See, my question is, customer service is always outsourced and the experiences are horrible. Now, what I'm asking is, has there been any research done whether it actually impacts the business negatively or positively? Because it seems to be the buzzword. Everyone is outsourcing and they say we are making more money because of this.
See, in our case, we are eventually, I can share it from our example. In a year's time, we plan to have our own, because now we think we have gained enough, because in our company, that kind of domain knowledge is proving to be extremely difficult. So, and also the customer experiences, customers are not having not getting very pleasant experience, and in our case, sometimes a person can be in actual distress. So we are eventually, we've reached a decision that for our own business success and to ensure that the customer get to see the excellence which our sister company has in terms of diagnosis just passed on when they interact with us, so that we are now eventually taking it over.
Thank you, excellent
I
question.
just add a
You would like
little
to add?
bit, yeah.
Yep.
I think it's a very important discussion for today because as we all said that we are moving towards the service industry and service is going to call the shots. You know, we moved away from the manufacturing to the IT to the now the service industry, which is going to really drive us. These are the questions which many companies would be asking themselves, what is the value proposition and are we really communicating the right service message that we would like to stand for. So, for example, our company, we have not outsourced our call center. And there's a huge pressure on us from the finance team. See, I am of the assumption that if you have finance and marketing or finance and customer care sitting together, finance, their only objective is how to not spend money. And marketing or other functions, their only objective is how to ensure that we spend money for the brand. So I don't know when we will outsource or when we will not outsource. So that question is outside of this. But yes, it's a question that we all must ask ourselves and see whether it's adding value to the core business that we stand for.
Great. Thank you. I think excellent question. I think the next question. Yeah.